Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are 2 Chronicles 9 and 10. Now, I'm standing here on the Cape Coast. I've got my best sailor's hat on, and behind me is a wreck of a ship. You can see it just above my finger there. And the reason I'm standing here is that we're closing out the life of Solomon now. And what we're going to see is that I think out of all the kings of Israel, he was the one that was most interested in sea travel. I mean, he imported horses and chariots. He brought in logs via the sea. He had a merchant navy. He had ships going out into Africa. We'll see that in a moment. Anyway, the chapter starts with the Queen of Sheba coming to see for herself what she had heard about him. She came with very difficult questions to test him for his wisdom. And then she looked around and she saw the food on his table, the infrastructure that he had, the people that were working for him, and she said she's never seen anything like it in the whole world. And this is what she says: because of the love of your God for Israel and his desire to uphold him forever, he has made you king over them to maintain justice and righteousness. And so she brings up the idea that God has made Solomon king, give him all this wisdom, because he loves the people. Now she's stuck on a very important truth here. God does love his people, and what he wants for his people is good leadership. So we saw some excesses here with Solomon, but the Queen of Sheba gets to that point. We'll see about it later. Anyway, Solomon gives the Queen of Sheba, out of his generosity, much more than she brought him with her entourage. And this is what it says. He brought in things for his great palace, this Lebanon palace. I mean, he brought in ivory, had this massive throne with lions sculpted next to it, and he had trading ships and a fleet of ships, 21 says. And then he had cities for his chariots and his horses. And this is what it says: the king had a fleet of trading ships manned by Heron's servants. Once every 3 years it returned carrying gold, silver, ivory, apes, and baboons. Well, ivory, apes, and baboons, you know where it came, eh? Somewhere near Africa, yeah. Anyway, he dies after 40 years, and his son Rehoboam comes to the throne. And Rehoboam calls the elders of Israel to him and says, give me some advice. They said, we don't like what your father did. He worked us too hard. He was like this type A leader, this great performer, and he got everybody working, and they said, we want to rest. So he says, give me 3 days. He goes to speak to his young men who grew up with him, and they said, nah, tell the people that my little finger is thicker than my father's waist, that he scourged you with whips. I'm going to scourge you with scorpions. So Rehoboam calls the people together and said, you lazy so-and-sos, I'm not going to give you time off. Work harder. And the people looked at him and said, well, you are no longer our king. And they went home. Anyway, he sends out his guy in charge of forced labor. They kill him. He manages to get onto his chariot and escapes. And basically, we're left with a situation where Rehoboam has got a rebellion on his hands, and Jeroboam, someone who God had spoken over before, saying, I'm going to use you in Jerusalem, has come now back from Egypt. And we go into the next chapter with this very ominous situation where there's rebellion and a possible split in the people of Israel. Which leads me to think about God's plan for leadership. And I'm going to take you to the words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 20. He says, when he heard the 10 talking about this, they had been fighting amongst themselves as who was the greatest. Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become the greatest among you must be the servant. Whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and has given his life as ransom for many. Jesus is saying leadership is important for the health of God's people. And take it from Jesus, not from Rehoboam, not even from Solomon. Jesus says leadership should be like this. It should come to serve, not be pressing for great thrones of ivory and great gold. No. Leadership given by God should be there to serve and to lay your life down for people, that's when the people are in a good place. I firmly believe that the big debates about gender, the big debates about abuse, the bigger debates about race in the world today stem from sin, which has crept in and caused the people to oppress other people through tyrannical leadership. If all people, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of position, served like Jesus served, these issues wouldn't be on the table, would they? And so what we see today is a king who sort of got there, Solomon, but then he lost his way. And he produced a son, Rehoboam, who did not understand kingdom leadership. As for you and me, I trust that we take the words of Jesus to heart, lay down our lives, serve our people with everything inside of us.